Hello, my flower friends. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler. And friends, I am really happy to be here with you today. And I'm just surrounded in beautifulness here today, kind of a different setup going on here with activities happening here on the farm. And it's just my pleasure to be here. And if we've never met before, I am the owner of the gardenersworkshop.com, which started out as a little teeny flower farm in the middle of the city back in 1998. And it's grown to become so much more than that. And you can find everything that we do over at thegardenersworkshop.com, because while I was a high production flower farmer for over 25 years, now our main focus is helping other people grow cut flowers, whether for profit or for pleasure. And as you'll see today, we grow vegetables too, and just how I kind of do that, right? So we're going to talk about that. But anyway, just to give you a little lay of the land here. So today I'm going to be talking about, this is how I grow salad for my family. And I was transformed about 3 years ago when I started doing it this way. Even though I had this big commercial garden with all the right bells and whistles, I still found it to be a challenge, particularly for salad. And so I'm going to share with you today how I grow salad for my family, and share how I do it. And so I am going to just jump right in. Now, down below this video, there's actually going to be a ribbon of products, so you can actually purchase any of the products, seeds that you see me mention and talk about during this little time together. So what I wanted to start off by saying is how I actually do this. So I call out here on my farm, I'm inside my farm building, right? This is my stage for all the live shows that I do. Right in front of me out here is a big porch. And that's the porch that I walk across to get into my house, which is about 50 feet that way. And so back when I used to plant my leaf lettuce and tried to grow carrots and beets, didn't have great success out in the garden with those root vegetables. But even with my lettuce and stuff, I just found that it was just so easy to kind of like forget to harvest them. You know how it gets busy, right? While I was busy growing and selling and cutting and delivering flowers, I know that everybody else is busy with life and their jobs too. So that's when I started growing a lot of the salad ingredients in large containers out here on my porch of this building. Literally the porch that I walk across 50 times a day, probably. So it's a little hard to not notice what needs to happen. And it really revolutionized my life. And from my past experience, I already knew that large containers are key to growing successfully in containers. And that's not just for growing vegetables. If you had a choice to either use 4 pots this big or 1 pot this big, I will tell you that there's a night and day difference over how those plants will grow and how you have to take care of it. Those smaller pots, you have to water at least once a day. And in fact, here in the South where I am, when we're hitting those 100-degree days, you might have to water twice a day because the mass of soil is so small. You could grow the same things that you would have in those 4 pots in that one large pot and not have to water necessarily maybe every day. You can get away with a little bit more. You have to kind of like figure that out for yourself. But I will tell you that I skipped watering days. And why am I able to do that? Because the size of the container I'm growing in, and then the quality of the potting mix that I actually use. And you don't use garden soil in containers. Not only is it incredibly heavy, garden soil's structure is totally different than what you need in a container. Container, you need something that's kind of light and fluffy so that water can run through it, and that air, because what a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know this either, is that oxygen to roots is just as important as water is. So that's why it's so important which kind of potting, that you have a good quality potting mix, right? So large container is better. And so for me, that is like what a great vision is. Have you ever seen, I know that we used to see them all the time, like at the big discount stores. those half whiskey barrels, it had that, they would cut them in half and that would become a container. That's like the perfect size. That's what I started out growing in because they were so widely available. Now you find them and they're made out of composite, which is totally fine. They're much lighter. But that's the size I'm talking about. So I would say, as a general rule, 18 to 24 inches, 18 to 24 inches wide as a goal, and at least 12 inches deep. Now, if you were going to try to grow something like beets or carrots in a container, you probably even need more depth than that. I actually grow beets and carrots highly successfully now because I have these raised beds that are 18 inches tall, and they're filled with amazing potting soil and compost mixed together. I grew the best beets I have ever grown when I started growing in that garden. I mean, like, we have so many beets, and that's just never been the case in the past. So container gardening for everything except for those roots. I think 12 inches is deep enough. Deeper is better though, y'all. Deeper is better. And the composite material is really beneficial because those don't typically crack or break if they freeze in the wintertime. And they're lightweight. I tend to drag my pots around. Sometimes I bring, especially salad, which we're talking about today, I bring them inside when we go deep low, even though they may be covered, trying to preserve what I already have, right? The other thing that I would be sure of, besides having a large size container, is to ensure that it has nice big drainage holes. For a pot that size, probably 3 to 5. So if you buy a composite, sometimes you have to hit the knockouts to knock out the holes, or even just drill holes. Or sometimes you can cut them with certain kinds of tools. But you've got to have good drainage. That's super important. So what do I plant in these containers? What do I grow in them? And I'll tell you guys, the leaf lettuce, this is the leaf lettuce of my dreams. This is, it's called the Gourmet All-Star Mix, and it's got a mix of green and purple leaves. And if you haven't grown your own leaf lettuce, compared to what you buy in the store, not only will your homegrown last a couple weeks in the refrigerator once you harvest it, but there is so much flavor that you just never even knew existed in lettuce before. So this is my go-to. This is the one that I grow primarily, the main ingredient for my salad. And let me tell you how I do it. So I have these big pots, right? I usually designate 3 pots to this particular lettuce. And I'll start seeds today, let's say, and then I'll start seeds again in 2 to 3 weeks. And that's for the second pot. And then 2 to 3 weeks later, I'll start again the same leaf lettuce, and that's for the third pot. And then what happens is when I cut this pot clean, because it'll regrow, when I cut that pot clean, we have that for 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the volume that you need. And so when that's done, you've eaten it, you're going to harvest the second pot. That's given that first pot time to regrow. So we're basically succession planting, but we're doing it with pots, and so forth and so on. And it will definitely regrow. So that's my go-to. Love that guy. Now, if you're into arugula, it is a super great grower in containers. This is that spicy lettuce. It's not a lettuce, spicy green, that great. I love putting it on pizzas, and we even stir fry with it. And it's a great candidate. And here are those beets I was telling you about. Now, we love growing the beets for these amazing beets. They're so good for you, right? But did you know that their tops, especially when it's baby, are like a delicacy? If you look at those high-end mixes you buy at the store, those little leaves that are a little bit more leathery with red veining through it, those are beet baby greens, y'all. You can definitely grow beet baby greens in your container, and it's quite delicious. And then if you want to grow beets, we plant those out into our big raised beds. Now, this is my favorite kale. This is Black Magic. Can you see all those little lumps and bumps that are on there? It is one of the most delicious kales. And we do the same thing with this. We eat it, we harvest it when it's a baby green to use in our salads, but we let it get a little bit bigger, and it's great for stir fries and stuff. And for anybody in my age group, I'm 64, that you're always having osteoporosis on your mind, this is a great one to eat for lots of vitamin D and calcium, and that is a really good one. And then we have really started trying to eat more stir fry stuff, just more vegetables, higher content. This is they call it the premium greens mix. And that's and again, all of these seeds are down in that ribbon below the video that you can check out if you'd like. This has a little bit more spice. It has some cabbages and mustards in it. Mustard is like the spicy part of that. And that makes my husband love this. And so if I slide a little bit of this into his leaf lettuce, he really loves that. It just has more flavor, right? And then we love growing broccoli, y'all. We grew the best broccoli last year that we have ever had. We were able to cover it with insect netting, which I'll show you that in a minute, and tell you how I use that. But I also make homemade dog food for our Goldens, and part of what their breakfast is oatmeal, and I make it once a week, and it has 25% vegetables in it. Man, I love using these broccoli stalks, and we shred them in a food processor. So no part of this broccoli that I grow ever goes to waste. Totally love that. And then I don't know if you've ever grown Swiss chard. Look at the color of those stems. First off, it's beautiful ornamental. If you just want to grow a beautiful fall and maybe even through winter, depending on where you live. If you're in the South, you can definitely have it out all winter long. But again, for spring, it's really beautiful. But whenever vegetables are this bright color, like beets, purple carrots, carrots are orange, purple carrots, yellow carrots, all of those colored vegetables are just so full of good stuff for you. And Swiss chard is no different. This is really good stir fried. And again, we do grow carrots. And I'll tell you my little secret. I used to have the worst time getting carrots to sprout out in the garden. And it's because I didn't monitor them enough and water every day to get them actually to sprout well. We pre-sprout carrots in soil blocks and then plant the little soil block out when they're about 5 to 7 days old, so that the delicate, viable part is past, right? And so that's a great way that you can get your carrots going. And then we are big radish eaters around here, and you can definitely grow these guys in your containers. We grow the French breakfast as well as the Easter egg. And these are all these different colors come in this seed mix. And I think the key thing to remember about all of this salad stuff, when you're eating vegetables raw, baby is better. Don't let them get old and woody and bigger, right? And so I want to show you how I'm just going to do a quick demo on how I start my lettuce. And I want to say that really you could direct seed all of these seeds. But what we've learned, we did a big trial here on my farm this summer. We planted one of those big demo beds, which is 16 feet long. We planted an 8-foot garden on one side from direct seeding, and the very exact same garden on the other side of that bed, or the other end of that bed, by transplants. We started them indoors and planted them outside at the same time, and then had a little race. They both did great. I mean, they're beautiful. It's our Planet Pink collection. But I'll tell you the big difference for me was how much attention the direct sowing bed needed daily during that key time, the first 3 weeks after you sow it. Not only do you have to water it pretty much daily, I mean, we're hot here, it dries out fast, right? And some of the seeds are surface sown. But not only do you have to water it daily outside in the garden, but you have to cultivate to keep the weeds seeds that are present from sprouting and overtaking your seeds while you're waiting for your flowers to germinate and get started. So we did that. We did this test, right? I mean, it's a YouTube. You can find it here. It's the Planet Pink Garden. But so they both work. It's just a matter of how much time do you have. It's because I'm already watering other seedlings here in my grow room or in my little seed starting setup. It's just far more convenient for me just to have these along the side to do it. So it's up to you, but you can go either way. So let's just look here for just a minute. I'm going to show you actually how I start my seeds. Let's see how you can see here. So I do soil blocking, and there's our lettuce seed. And I've already made one set of blocks. And this is, we use, because again, I don't have any hoop or greenhouses. All my seed starting is done in an indoor room. I use trays with no drainage holes that's flat. And it just makes watering incredibly convenient, easy, and fast, right? Oh, my blocker's missing. Let me find my soil blocker. Looks like they are starting seeds outside. So let me grab, we'll just use a brand new one, y'all. I have it right here. So here is a brand new blocker. This is, my friends, a potato masher, which I find to be the best tool for incorporating the water in with your blocking mix. You hold onto the stationary bar and literally just push it down into the mix. I do it 2 times. You want to fill the chambers, but you don't want to pack them. I use the potato masher to just strike it off. And then literally you just place the tool on the tray, give it a squeeze, and friends, just that quick, we just made 20 little containers. And I'm going to sow the seeds in here, and they're going to grow in that block until they actually get planted. So let me move this out of the way. So one of the things that I love about soil blocking versus other seed starting method is how soon in the process you can actually handle the blocks. So let's just say I could sow my seeds today, and if they sprouted, I can plant these out in my container when they're just a couple of weeks old, because I can pick it up and plant it out there, right? When they're vulnerable. If you did that in a plug tray, let's say, you have to wait until it's got a lot more roots. And for something like this that I'm going to install protection over my container, which I'll show you in just a moment how I protect my container from, squirrels and birds from pulling up. Oh my gosh, they're just vicious. They don't realize how much trouble they're causing, right? So I use a toothpick and I just dump the lettuce seeds in here. And I know they're white. You can barely see them. But literally, I don't know if you can see, that seed just jumped on the end of my toothpick. Why? Because an aluminum seed pan does not have any static electricity. And literally, lettuce seeds like to be lightly covered. I'll loosen that block. So you literally just push it down into the block, and you just pick one up and push it in. And it is the quickest, easiest step. When you put one seed per block, you don't ever have to thin, and we don't ever bump them up. It's probably one of the biggest labor savers on my flower farm. So that is how I actually sow the seeds. Now let me show you, let me get this out of the way. Let's take a look at, I want to show you here in just a moment the actual how I protect my containers. As a flower grower, learning how to grow is so little a piece of the pie. The business part is the biggest, but it's protecting what you're growing from varmints has become just a really huge piece for us. And when I figured out how to do that, it just changed my life. I mean, there's nothing more upsetting, disappointing, and just making you want to quit is to come out and find everything you planted yesterday either eaten to the ground by rabbits, or squirrels have just uprooted them because they're burying their nuts and stuff they're collecting for winter. It's tough going. So I'm going to share that with you too. Now, the number one selling product that we have sold since I started the Old Gardener's Workshop store in 2005 is this kit. So this is the Soil Block Maker Kit. So if you're doing another method of seed starting, this has everything you need to actually just switch to soil blocking. So it includes this little 20 Soil Blocker. And by the way, this is the original Ladbroke Soil Blocker. We import those from England, as well as it includes 3 packs of seeds. You choose either 3 cool season or 3 warm season. You select that when you check out. It also includes my online course, which walks you through the entire process. The trays that I mentioned, as well as a toothpick, a seed pan, and these little plant IDs, but I actually use those like the tools that I use to handle my soil blocks if I need to for any reason. And it includes a bag of the ready-made blocking mix. This bag makes 600 of those little blocks, y'all. It's incredibly space savvy. And so you can check out and get all of that, and you're set up to actually starting your seeds, right? Now, I want to show you how I protect my containers. So, out here in the fields of my garden, we've always had hoops and row cover, but it's always been a challenge in the heat of summer to protect our stuff. Row cover is made to trap some heat, right? Well, you don't want that to happen during summer. And we started using about 3 years ago. It's called insect netting. And I will tell you, this has changed it's saved me from so many heartaches. I can't even tell you all of them. So this is made to be used like a row cover, to put on hoops. You weight it down with bags to prevent like insects having access to your plants. Think about your brassicas, how the moth lays that egg on your broccoli and your cauliflower, and then that little caterpillar is born and eats holes and everything. That's the type of thing this insect netting was made for. However, there are so many other uses. It's nylon like a pair of pantyhose. It lets more light in and more heat out. And I have even tested this in 97 degrees, y'all. And we're just so pleased with how we use it. So I started using this out in the field as an insect netting. Then I started using it as a sun cap, which you can see on the product if you go over to the store, what that is and how it shades plants planted in the heat of summer. But for my containers, I just couldn't get it. So couldn't figure out how to actually do it. So that's when we started using, this is a grow through. If you can imagine, this is metal, it's coated. This goes on top. Will sit on top. These legs attach and they suspend this above your pot. This is only purpose is to hold up the insect netting so it doesn't crush your plants. You install the grow through. Then you drape this guy around. I actually have a picture of this somewhere. Oh, here it is. It looks like this when you're done. This is one of my large pots. Literally, there's one of these grow throughs under there. You drape the insect netting, and then we love this stuff. This is called a flexi tie. This is an English product also. It is a stretchy tie. It holds a knot. If you can see, I have a knot in there. And this is like the belt that we use on our container. You just drape the insect netting over. I like to use one layer. It's not necessary. And you can get this whole kit. And it's a 6x6 piece. Sometimes you can actually cut that smaller. If you could make 2 out of it. It depends on what size you have. But the container protection kit came from what I faced here on my farm. And so you'll find that available on our website. And then you will also find, this is a roll of that flexi tie. And I meant to look this up yesterday. I didn't know. And I'm looking as we're actually talking about it, how many feet this is. Because I'll tell you what else we love this for is if you make any kind of wreaths. Wait a minute. Flexi. There it is. It's $23.95, but it's a lot. Let me see how many feet it is. Oh my goodness. It says the same one here. 60 meters, whatever that is. We have to fix that. So it's long. I think it's like, somebody look up and post it in the comments for me. How long is 60 meters? We love this stuff for making wreaths in the fall. Like if you're using a grapevine wreath, it doesn't even show up, y'all. It is chocolate brown. So we absolutely love that. It's really useful. And I mentioned we also offer that insect netting by itself, if that interests you. I love using it this time of the year. Oh, almost 200 feet. Holy cow, y'all. That's enough to make several wreaths. Thank you, Jesse. And we need to get that on our website. But yes, this stuff we absolutely adore. So what I use this insect netting for as we're heading into fall, and maybe you're planting some cool season stuff that you want to shade just because it's still hot outside, cool flowers. I use our pre-arched hoops, and I push those in the ground like you're going to put row cover on them. But I use the insect netting and I fold it in half to make it skinnier. I weight it on each end and pull it taut. And then I just use big jumbo clips and hold the sides up and clip it on the wire hoops going down. And you've literally created an incredible shade structure over top of a bed really, really easily. And it does a fabulous job. So you'll find that also. And I'll tell you that last year or the year before, we planted a 120-foot bed of different coxcombs. You may have seen, we had some viral videos. It was like the 5-foot huge coxcomb. It was gorgeous. Those plants were planted on a 97-degree day. I mean, it was so hot outside. Literally, we already had the hoops installed, and Elizabeth would plant 10 feet, and then we'd pull the insect netting out to immediately shade them. We did not lose one transplant, which doesn't usually ever happen. You always lose some, but much less in that kind of heat. So can't say enough about how helpful the insect netting is. And, you know, the other thing that I'm just going to wrap this up with, that one of the books that I wrote called Vegetables Love Flowers, it's not really about directly growing vegetables. It's about how flowers actually benefit it. And if you are struggling with controlling pests and just that whole figuring that garden thing out, this is the book for you. This is the book that probably tells of my gardening philosophy of not using pesticides. And doing that is not just walking away from pesticides, y'all. There's other things that you do. Sometimes you have to stop some things you're doing for 2 or 3 years while you get things back restored. But this is the book that can really help you with that. I was reading through this. I was doing a little program for this. And this book is really packed with my theology, I would say, of gardening. You know, it's like it really comes down to you restoring the natural order of your garden and making it really healthy and not growing those crops that maybe are magnets for pests in your area. And that's different for everybody. For me here in the South, I would be willing to say that I would never consider growing on my flower farm gladiolas and Shasta daisies. While they're both beautiful, stand by, y'all. I am not plugged in. Ooh. There we go. My plug came undone. Those two flowers, which are fabulous flowers, but here where I am, they're thrip magnets. That's a very difficult pest to manage. And as long as I had those on my farm, I was never able to get them under control. Been without them and thrips at a reasonable level now for over a decade. So it's more than that. And that's what this book kind of introduces. It's not going to tell you everything you need to know, but it's going to introduce you to that concept so that you can figure that out for yourself. So friends, I hope you're going to dive in and eat lots of homegrown lettuce. It's a great way. Growing radishes is a great way for kids to get used to eating from the garden, especially if you get them when they're little kids, little radishes. It works out really, really well. So friends, thanks so much for joining me here today, and hope to see you again. And remember that tomorrow inside my phone app is our big live gardening show where we show all the harvest, of which some is already behind me here. They're out doing it as we speak, and would love to see you there. So you can go to your phone's app store, search Gardener's Workshop, and download the free Shop app. You can watch replays in there. I do a giveaway on Friday, a $25 store credit, and we do a little wrap-up Q&A at the end. So it's really a lot of fun. 12 noon Eastern time inside the Gardener's Workshop Shop app. And I would love to see you there, my friends. All right, friends. Ciao.